In the previous movies, we've covered the explosion effect that kind of you'd see in like a Looney Tunes or a Tom and Jerry cartoon. So let's continue the process of finishing this so that it looks like more typical cloud poofs. And there's a couple of things we need to do. We need to add the internal shadow layers. So I'll just stop this and show you how I've done that. So I've made an effects layer here. I have to call the line separation layer. And if I right click on this layer, layer style, color overlay, I've given it this red color. Let's actually make it even deeper than that so we can really see it. So I've got a red, okay, 100% normal, okay. And now you can see it stands out. It's really a black line, but the FX layer, it's like a blend mode in Photoshop that enables us to do a temporary overlay. And I just went through straight ahead with my brush tool and drew it accordingly. Now in the previous movie, I did some fixes that kind of changed the position of some of the clouds and added some more. So I'm just going to go through frame by frame and correct these where they happen. Easy enough process. Sorry about that. So the area that I'm closing off here will be the shadow layer. I'm not going to bother putting it on these tiny little dots because I think they're so small it would be a waste of time and paint. And you can see there's some areas here where, if you remember the last movie, I made some changes. So let's get rid of that and redraw those. And that's a good idea to show just how I did it. Because there's sort of a churn with clouds, these can wobble a bit. They're not like something solid on a character, like a color set on a sleeve or something. So these have a little bit of forgiveness in them. Okay, so now if I go through slowly, I think if I switch off the blue sky on the background layer, that might expose any mistakes if I've let something slip out. And I think I should probably put a bit of a shadow in here too, because we do have some shadows on these orb areas here, and it'll make a nice kind of balance too. I don't have a sponsor, so if you want to support my work and help it to continue, you can subscribe to my Patreon. I'm making new animation projects week by week and providing animation assets that can be downloaded and used. I also have a very large collection of tutorials in the LinkedIn Learning Library covering animation and design, and I'm putting all the links to these in the notes below. So the next step will be to add colors to the cloud. So you may have seen me do something similar in an earlier movie, and we'll do it again here so you can see the process right through. What I will do is walk you through the step on a single frame, and then I'll show you the completed run because it'll be the same process. And some people like to fall asleep to people talking on videos on YouTube. I know there's a great Twitch streamer called T90. He does Age of Empires Definitive Edition streams, and he's always amused by the fact people tell him they like watching his videos, because it puts them to sleep, because his voice is so calming. So until he screams when something exciting happens in the game. So maybe you're one of those and you don't care. Anyway, who knows? So I'm going to make two more layers that are going on top of the white layer. One will be the color of the cloud. So let's see, we'll call this one just color. Make it lowercase. Color base. And then the next one will be the shadow. Call it SH. Let's switch off so you can see what's going on here. We have our white layer, we have our two new layers, we have our line sep, and we have our cleanup line, and they're all nested inside a group. Very important, we have to be inside a group layer, which you can access from here, and then you just nest your folders in there. So color base. We want the cloud to look like a cloud, so I'm thinking sort of gray. Let's give it like a little color. Slight blue, and we can pick a brush. There's different ways of doing this. We can pick a brush and color. We can do that. We can also, again, the lasso tool might be the quickest way of doing it, and then fill. And then you're wondering why can't we see it matching? It's because we need to switch on the little alpha, and now it's masked and off, on, off, on. The beauty of that is so much easier than having to paint to the edge. We've already done that here on the white layer, and now we can do the same thing with the shadow layer. And we still have to be kind of careful lassoing, and I do recommend, I think for this one anyway, I would use the lasso tool. I'll show you the lasso tool on this side, and I'll use my hand using the brush on the other side, and you can see what you think is better. But the lasso tool does give you very sharp edges here. Holding down shift, or is it which key? Shift, yeah, is to add to the selection, and I think as alt or option will subtract. So it's really easy to do. And now I'm going to just pick black for the shadow layer and fill, and something weird happened there. So let's, oh yeah, I think, do we have, well, that is very weird. I don't know why this area didn't fill. Let's go to the brush tool. Yeah, very strange. It's a glitch for sure. So KRITA, it does have the glitches, but I've been able to work around them all. Now we can take the opacity of that area down. We have the color set line we can keep, I would say, as like that area, like a black line, or we can switch it off. So that looks really nice too. So you have the option, because everything's on layers. I promised you that I would do the other side with the brush tool and a hard brush, and then we can compare them and see what happens when you're doing it by hand, because it could certainly be a little looser looking than the lasso tool, but maybe you like that for some effects. Okay, now if I switch off the set line, you see it's not quite as clean. You get this kind of irregularity here, and I can always kind of go in and try to smooth it out, but it definitely takes a bit longer than the lasso. It's your call. And then if you can always use the eraser tool and erase back if you want. And I go back, do a bit of both, back and forth. That's it. I could add a highlight layer. You can keep going. Like on Roger Rabbit, they had multiple layers and they were shot at different like blur levels. It was a technical piece of wizardry. But the more layers you have, the more you can do. You can blur one layer and get those kind of nice, realistic gradient effects, rim lights, that kind of thing. It's very, very elaborate. Much easier to do on a computer. Just the time sink is having to draw them. Yes, one other thing would be the shadow layer. I need to convert that to an animated layer and then drag the first frame. It's a little mistake that I've been making, is not doing that before I start. Then make a bunch of empty frames, and now I have multiple exposures so I can continue the process. So I'm just going to go right through, do the same thing. I'll speed this up, and it's 4:04 p.m. Let's see how long this takes. It's now 4:19, so that took about 13 minutes. Not too bad. It's pretty tedious, to be honest now, but you put on a podcast. Like, Richard Williams gives some good advice in his book, and one of it I kind of disagree with is when he says, don't ever listen to music or any background noise, just think about the work. I just don't agree with that. Like, there are times when, yes, you put off external distractions and you focus on the work. When you're grinding like I've just been doing, there is no higher level brain function going on. You're very little. You need to put on music or a podcast or your favorite YouTube quack or whatever. It doesn't matter. But if you want to burn out, like, that's a good way of doing it. I do not recommend that. Anyway, when you're planning your scene, when you're doing the major poses, yes, laser. Focus. But once you're into the grind, that's a completely different phase of the process. At that point, you can put on a podcast, audiobook, do something useful with that time other than line between line between line. Burned out twice, not doing it a third time. It's not to be recommended. And I don't intend spending 29 years working on a movie that I never finish either. I'd rather work on no movie. Okay, I could tell you stories about that, and I will at some point, but you're going to have to join the Patreon. Okay, color base. Let's say I want to change this color. Right click, layer style. And it's like a Homer Simpson kind of nuclear cloud that we've all come to know and love. I'll just go to the channel here, normal, 100%. And now all frames are colored. So we can make universal color changes to any individual layer that easily. So I love this. I really do. Genuinely love this program. So let me save it as color. These file names are getting long, but that'll help to find them later on. Another thing I might do here too that would help when you're watching something to distraction, I'm going to rotate the screen, get a slightly different view of it. I think I've done as much as I can do with it. And honestly, if there's anything that you see that you don't like, you are free, if you download the file, to fix it yourself. So I think they will be fairly easy, small little nudges at this point. All right, so I'm going to call this that I'm very pleased with. I will use this myself if I ever have like a project in the future that requires like a little smoke poof cloud, a dust poof. I have a couple of others like this too from different angles. And they're way more fun to draw than to kind of hack them together with symbols and Flash or Animate CC or whatever. Because you get that nice kind of Looney Tunes effect. And if anything else does chop out at me, and honestly it's not, like, I've looked at this hundreds of times now, and there might be still an area here, but I think we're fine. Let me do one last little check here with the background. And if I make the background layer, take that color really down into the darker range. No, it's fine. It's fine. And it's a little too hot, so I want to be able to hand this off to people and not feel ashamed. Take that color down. Like it's a deep. Nah, that's nice. I like that. Quality. Alright, so that's it. I'm trying to think what to do in the next movie. I've been promising all kinds of stuff. I think I might do just some drawings and walk you through some of my drawing process. And again, it's all based heavily on the Don Bluth style and that classic Warner Brothers Disney look from the 60s, 70s, early 80s. That's the period I like the most. And it's adaptable to any style anyway. And I made an awful mistake. I actually I went on YouTube and I watched some YouTube movies about like bad art advice that people are getting on TikTok, and it really upset me. So maybe I like to counter that for the lucky 300 people who actually have found my channel. So let's do more of this stuff, and I'll get on to the next one at the next time. Join the Patreon, subscribe, like all the rest. God.